Hey everyone, I'm Vino Lovania, and welcome to the Junk Box, a series where we take odd, bad, or otherwise unloved archetypes and give them a chance to shine. Or at least a chance to be something slightly better than unplayable garbage. For this episode, the archetype I'm pulling out of the Junk Box is going to be Fortune Ladies, an archetype that debuted in the 5Ds anime, being used by Carly, and was then released in Ancient Prophecies and recently given a wave of legacy support in Rising Rampage. Fortune Ladies are an archetype of spellcaster-type monsters, which means they play very nice with some powerful generic spellcaster support, such as Spellbooks and a couple of other cards you can see on your screen that I'll explain in more detail in the card by card. Fortune Ladies are a pretty unique archetype, with their main gimmick being that all of them have question mark attack and defense points, but their attack and defense is always equal to their level multiplied by some number, varying from 200 to 400 depending on the monster. Then, all of the monsters gain one level during your standby phase, which of course then also increases their attack points. Now, as you can imagine, that attack gain isn't super relevant nowadays, because often your monsters aren't going to survive until your standby phase, and even if they do, they're only going to gain a few hundred attack, which won't really make a huge difference. So the level manipulation effects aren't really relevant, but what is relevant is the Fortunate's other effects, because those effects give the deck a ton of swarming and a ton of draw power. Like, once you start going, the stuff you can do is pretty crazy. You start summoning stuff out of the deck like crazy, you draw upwards of 10 cards in a turn. It's kind of nutty what this deck can do when it gets to do its thing. So with that, let's go ahead and take a look at the deck itself, so I can show you how it does that thing, and the types of other things the deck can do even if you don't get your full combo. Alright. So let's go ahead and have a look at these cards. The Fortune Lady lineup I'm playing is 3 copies of Light, 3 copies of Past, 2 copies of Water, and 1 copy of Fortune Lady Fire. Fortune Lady Light is the key card of the deck. It's effective that when it leaves the field due to a card effect, you summon a Fortune Lady monster from your deck. Now that's a really powerful effect, but it has one major weakness, which is that is a when you can, meaning it's gonna miss the timing if, basically anything goes wrong. So, to enable Light and get our swarming going, you want to run things like Fortune Lady Past. Fortune Lady Past is the archetype's tuner monster, and her effect is that you can target any Fortune Lady monster on the field, and then banish any number of other spellcaster monsters from your hand, field, or graveyard, and increase or decrease the level of the targeted monster by the number of monsters you remove. So this is powerful because you can summon Past, summon Light, then go past target itself, banish the Light, which will increase Past's level, and also trigger Light's effect, letting you summon a Fortune Lady from deck and keep going. The Fortune Lady you're summoning from deck with Light is almost always going to be Fortune Lady Water, who lets you draw 2 cards when it's special summoned while you control a Fortune Lady. So this is kind of the start of how the engine gets going, right? You summon Past, banish Light, Light summons Water, you draw 2 cards, then you can go into a synchro with Water and Past, and you can start doing some pretty powerful things. The last Fortune Lady is a one-of Fortune Lady Fire, which lets you destroy a monster your opponent controls and burn them equal to its attack points when it's summoned in attack position by the effect of a Fortune Lady card. This is kind of an additional utility piece of removal you can get off Light, and also you can get off a couple of other support cards. The most important of those support cards is Fortune Lady Calling, which lets you summon a Fortune Lady from your deck with a different name than the Fortune Ladies you control if you already control a Fortune Lady. That's going to be your main way of getting your, Light Past combo set up. You can normal summon one of Light or Past, summon the other one with Calling, and then go off. Unfortunately, Calling does lock you out of the extra deck except for Synchro monsters for the rest of the turn after it resolves, which can be annoying because it means you can't make big Hulk plays, you can't go into things like Selene. But it's still a pretty powerful card that gets you into your engine, and there are decent enough synchros so you don't feel too bad about it. So, you can see what I was saying with this being a 2-card combo, right? You really need Monster plus Calling to get going. That's where Fortune Vision comes in, a continuous spell that searches any Fortune Lady card on activation. This is any card, it can search your monsters, it can also search Calling, very powerful. Its continuous effect is okay, it gives you some mediocre battle damage protection if an opponent's card is banished, and alright destruction protection if one of your cards is banished. The main use of this card is just that if you have it on the field, you can use it to chain block the activation of light after a past banishes it. So the effect's not really impressive, but it's a searcher, it's a really good card, so you play 3 of it. And then Fortune's Future. Unfortunately, it doesn't have Fortune Lady in the name, so it's not searchable, but it's still part of Greed, that you target a banished Fortune Lady, return it to the graveyard, and then draw 2 cards. This card is super powerful, you can't search it, but if you draw into it, it is just the nuts. Extends your combo even further. Great card, you can't run 3 because it is a bit clunky if you don't get your combo going, but once you do, it is very, very nice. And the last actual Fortune Lady card of the deck is Fortune Lady Rewind, which is just Fortune Lady returned from the different dimension. You can summon any number of banished Fortune Ladies with different names, and they all go back into your deck at the end phase. This card, again, kinda like Future, isn't great unless you're able to set up your Banish Zone, which can be a bit slow. I only play 1 because of that, it can be awkward to set up, but when it does go off, it can just go off, right? Very cool card, very much like playing it. So, that's all the Fortune Ladies, and kind of the main goal of the deck is to enable the main, light past into water Fortune Lady combo. But, that's not super consistent. So to help out with that, we're running some Spellbooks. Blue Boy gives you a normal summon that actually does something if you don't have carding in hand to go with your Fortune Lady monsters. And it has some additional synergy with the deck too. So my Spellbook spells, I'm running 3 of Secrets and 3 of Knowledge. Secrets is self-explanatory, gives you some consistency finding your Spellbooks. And Knowledge is an interesting card in the deck, because sending a Spellcaster or a Spellbook for cost is actually part of the effect, meaning Spellbook of Knowledge, sending a light on your field will activate the light's effect. And that's pretty cool, right? It gives you follow-up if a carding gets ashed. It means if you don't draw into carding, you still have some plays, right? That you can summon light, you can Knowledge it to draw 2 cards, and summon fire to pop your opponent's stuff. Very good card generically that even has a bit of extra utility in the deck. It's just great. And finally, for the monster lineup, we have some generic Spellcaster extenders. First of all is Ascator Dawnwalker, which lets you discard a card, special summon it from hand, as well as a Fire and Ascator from deck, which is a level 3 tuner. During the turn you do this, it locks you into Synchro monsters, which is a bit annoying, but again, does good Synchro, so that's kind of fine. This card's really nice. You often draw a bunch of cards, but have trouble getting them out of your hand, right? So you're just drawing a bunch of Fortune Ladies and Blue Boys that aren't useful because you've already normal summoned. So Dawnwalker gives you something powerful to draw into that can put a level 8 Synchro on the board, as well as giving you something to do if you don't have your Fortune Lady combo, because it can just stand alone make a threatening dude. It also, funnily enough, kind of extends the whole 5Ds anime shtick you've got going on, because this is support for Godwin's deck to go with the Carly deck we're already playing. Then finally, I run 3 copies of Silent Magician, which can be special summoned by tributing a Spellcaster monster, gains 500 attack for every card in your hand, and once per turn can negate the activation of a spell card and destroy it. This card's not great, right? Like, spell negation is alright, but it's much, much weaker than monster negation. But I think the card is still worth running, because it gives you stuff to do. If you can't get your full combo right, you can just normal summon a Blue Boy or something, play a Silent Magician on top of it, and that at least gives you some form of interaction. And it can just be a big beater you can drop if you have an extra monster left over. It also has one other effect, which is that when it's destroyed, you can summon any Silent Magician monster from your deck, which is usually going to be the 3500 attack Silent Magician level 8. I don't run the level 8 though, because it is a pretty big brick if you draw into it, and even if you don't, a lot of decks have ways to out the Silent Magician without destroying it, so I just don't really think it's worth running that. You could maybe side it, right, because there are some decks that do need to destroy Silent Magician, but yeah, I don't think it's super worth. Silent Magician itself is a good card though. Then I run 3 Ash Blossom, self-explanatory, cards look good. Hand traps in particular are strong in this deck because you do draw a ton of cards, right, which means you're going to be hard drawing these, which is always very nice. And then I run a few generic powerful cards like Monster Reborn, 1-for-1, Called by the Grave because you really don't want Ash hitting a carding or something, and Part of Avarice, which is I mean, it's not great, it can sometimes sit dead in your hand, but when it's good, it is really good, and you do go through your deck really fast, which can hurt you in the grind game. So I think running 1 is fine, and I also don't mind going up to 41 cards, because we do run a couple of garnets. You don't want to draw Ascator, you don't want to draw water, you don't want to draw fire, because none of these cards do anything if they're in hand, because Fortune Lady Light only summons from the deck. So as for the extra deck, I'm running mostly synchros because we have multiple cards that lock us into synchros, so we can't really go into links. Run 1 Trish, 1 Boilerload Savage, which is shockingly bad in the deck because you often have trouble getting a link in the grave before you're locked into synchros, but it is here just because sometimes it be like that, right? Sometimes you just normal Blue Boy, turn it into an Artemis, then tribute that off with Silent Magician, and then next turn you can go off and make Savage. The 2 level 8s you go into very often are going to be Adamantipator Risen Dragite and Draco Berserker of the Tenyi. Dragite is self-explanatory, it can negate a spell or trap if you have a water monster in grave, and you often do because you're summoning Fortune Lady Water or you drew into Blue Boy. And then Draco Berserker, when your opponent activates a monster effect, can't negate it but does banish the monster. I think that's a bit weaker than a negate, but it can be pretty strong, and it also swings for a bunch of damage going second, which is cool. I think it's just one of the best generic level 8s to make if you can't make Boilerload Savage like we generally can't. Got a couple of level 7s that you can make using Fortune Lady Pass level manipulation effect. I run Dawn Dragster, self-explanatory, and Fortune Lady Every, the Fortune Lady boss monster, who, during your opponent's end phase, if it's in the graveyard, can banish a spellcaster from grave to summon itself, and then when it leveled up during your standby phase, you can banish a monster your opponent controls. It's a pretty slow card, and it is really vulnerable to getting banished or getting returned to the extra deck or something. But in grind games where it does get destroyed, it can be a pretty powerful card to have a big ol' 2800 beater coming back every turn that threatens to banish your opponent's stuff if it's able to be alive in your standby phase. So, yeah, pretty neat boss monster, not the strongest card in the extra deck by any means, but when it comes down, it's generally pretty good. Then level 6s is the other main level you make, because Fortune Lady Past, Banish Light, Summon Water gives you a level 2 tuner and a level 4 non-tuner. I run 2 level 6s, Coral Dragon, which is the good one, and Autogeist Dragvirion, which, okay, I'm gonna be honest, it's not that good, but it is very cute, so I like it. The important part here is that when Dragvirion is tributed, you can summon it back from the graveyard. Meaning you can go into Dragvirion, tribute it off to summon Silent Magician because it is a spellcaster, and then bring the Dragvirion right back, which can, you know, give you some extra bodies, sometimes let you swing for a bunch of damage. It's just kind of amusing when it happens. I like the card. Then we run 1 Herald of Arclight and 1 Martial Metal Marcher. As for Link monsters, I run 1 Selene, 1 Crowley the First Prophecia, 1 Nightmare Phoenix, 1 Artemis the Magistus. This is the one you go into the most. It lets you set up your grave for Pot of Avarice or Boilerload Savage on turns you aren't going off with Carding or Ascator. And then finally 1 of Link Karibo, because we do run several level 1 monsters, so hey, why not? Alrighty, so now that I've been able to show you guys the deck and kind of talk through what it does, let's go ahead and see it in action with a few replays. This first one is a pretty good showcase of what the 4 combo can do if uninterrupted, so let's go ahead and roll the clip. I'm up against Gren Maju here, and I'm gonna go first. I'm gonna lead off with a Fortune Vision to search Light, and I'll summon Light and activate Carding and go into the 4 combo. Past effect is gonna target itself, banish Light. Light's effect is gonna activate, and it will be chain blocked by Fortune Vision, preventing an Ash. That is me summon Water, which is gonna be draw 2, and then I'm gonna go into Ascator to go into 2 level 7 Synchros, except I'm not because they have the rock and I don't have an answer to it. So I'm going to go ahead and activate Pot of Desires, and I want Ash it, because we don't want them getting +1s around here. They'll follow up with an Allure of Darkness, and they will hit the Gren Maju Daiza, and will swing in for a whole bunch of damage. It's going to pass back to me, and lo and behold, we have it again, because we had the double vision in hand. I'm going to summon Past, search Calling, activate Calling Summoning Light. Past's effect will activate targeting itself. I'm going to banish Light and some other stuff to make it level 5. Light will again be chain blocked by the vision, and we're going to summon a Fortune Lady Fire, and use its effect to blow up the Iza and deal a ton of damage. I'm going to go into Every here, because we don't have a great out to the rock right now. My opponent's going to rip Desires. Then they're going to follow up with the Gizmek to get out more monsters, and fortunately don't have a normal summon to end the game, but they will drop me to critical life points. During the end phase, Every will come back, and then during the standby phase, she levels up, letting me banish my opponent's Gizmek and increasing her to 3200 attack. My opponent will flip Banquet of Millions, yeeting both of our extracts into the next dimension, but I'm still free to swing in with Every. Then I'm going to set my Fortune Lady Rewind, pass the turn back, and unfortunately they will brick and concede. This one was a bit disappointing, I'm going to be honest, simply because they didn't draw the Grand Maju last turn, meaning I couldn't rewind into fire to kill them by blowing up the Grand Maju for 17,000 damage, but hey, you know what? We take those. So this next replay is kind of a good showcase of kind of non-standard ways to get your plays going when you don't draw into the standard 4 combo, and also a good showing of the kind of card draw I was talking about in the deck description. I'm against Dark Magician here, and I'm going to go first. I'm going to activate Spellbook of Secrets to get Blue Boy, because with only Vision in hand, it is a hard once per turn, so I can't get to 4 combo. I'm going to activate Vision, Searching Water, and discard it for 1/1 to go into a Light, and send Light with Knowledge, letting me draw 2 and summon Past from deck. Then Past can banish Light, raising its level to 2 and letting me activate Fortune's Future to draw 2 more cards, and then end on a Herald of Arcanite with an Ash we drew into in hand. My opponent's gonna normal summon Magician Soul, and we wanna Ash it, because you have to normal summon Soul, your hand's clearly not doing too well. And now we're free to go off with the 4 combo. I'm gonna activate Secrets, summon Light, activate Second Vision to get Calling, and that's gonna go into Past. Past is gonna, it's gonna do the thing, it's gonna banish Light, it's gonna summon some dudes, it's gonna draw some cards, it's gonna all be good. We get Water, we draw 2, we go into a level 8, and then we have Dawnwalker in hand we drew into to go off again and make Draco Berserker as well as Dragite. Gonna swing in with the big boys, and then we're gonna pass the turn back over to our opponent because we don't really have material to tribute for the Sun and Magician. My opponent's gonna go ahead, summon Keeper of Draconic Magic, and we will Draco Berserker it to prevent them from summoning stuff from deck. We're gonna activate Fortune Vision, which doesn't really do much, and we will Dragite the Eternal Soul they flip up. Next, they're gonna go ahead and set 1 card because we still have Arclight to prevent the Magicalized Fusion, and go ahead and swing in for game with the Dragite. Okay, so this is going to be the last replay I'm going to show, and this one needs a bit of a disclaimer. I'm actually playing an old version of the deck here with some suboptimal cards, like Supe Duskwalker, who's basically just a worse version of Ascator, and a few extra spellbooks that it turns out aren't actually that good. I normally wouldn't show a game with an old build of a deck, but this one in particular is a pretty cool game that shows off something you often don't get to see in the deck, which is the power of Fortune Lady Every in a long grindy game. So with that, let's get going. I'm up against Paleo Frogs here, and I'm gonna go first, activating Spellbook of Secrets to go into Blue Boy, and Blue Boy is gonna go and search Master, which is not a good card, don't run it in this deck, but that's gonna copy Secrets to get me the knowledge, and then I will discard my extra Secrets for Supe Duskwalker, summoning some dudes and going into a Martial Metal Marcher. Then I'm gonna use Ascator as well, discard a Light, summon my dudes, and go into my 2 strong level 8 synchros. My opponent's going to go ahead and they're going to swap Frog, and I am going to Draco Berserker the effect in hopes of preventing a Toad from coming down, but unfortunately my opponent does have a second swap in hand that they can use to go into the Toad. It's going to go run over my Supe that's just kind of sitting there, then they're going to set 2 and pass back to me. Toad effect and standby is going to summon Dupe, which is really annoying because now I can't just run over it. So I'm going to swing in with Draco, and I will drag out the Canadia they flip, letting me banish the Toad. Unfortunately, I didn't plan this out that well, and they will get to set my Dragite, which is going to be a problem. I'm going to go into Vision here, and then go into Light and Knowledge, because I want to get my spells played before the Dragite flips up. So Light's going to summon Past, and Past's effect will banish 2 copies of Light, letting me activate Fortune Vision to draw 2 more cards, setting me up hopefully for next turn. My opponent's going to flip up the Dragite, set a card, and run over my Draco Berserker, leaving me with no way to out the big monster. I'm going to use Past effect in the standby to level it up, summon Supe from hand, and go into the Fortune Lady Every, and I will set my Rewind, which hopefully I'll be able to set up soon. Dragite's going to kill Every, and Every will come back in end phase by banishing Fire. So, my opponent's going to Canadia it in my draw phase, preventing me from getting to standby, meaning I can't level up Every and banish the Dragite. Darn it! But I'll still be able to attack over the Canadia they summoned from grave, and pass the turn back to them. They're gonna swing over my Every again, and lo and behold, she's back again, baby. Every's gonna come out, and then in standby, I will try to level her up, and it will get striked. That Dragite is staying on board even longer. I'm gonna normal summon Pass and activate Calling, which will bait the Dragite activation, letting me flip the Rewind to summon a whole bunch of dudes, and also letting me activate Fortune Lady Fire's effect to pop Dragite, but they do have Torrential, wiping that whole board I just summoned. My opponent's going to draw into a very scary card there, and summon back a Ronin and pass, and then they will use the IDP to summon out my Every, preventing me from going into it again. Fortunately, its effect is negated, meaning it has 0 attack and defense, meaning this little blue boy will get to do some searching, and then we'll get to run over it. I'm gonna get Fate here, which again I don't run anymore. It's not good because Master is not good, meaning you just don't have enough Spellbooks to enable it. And they are gonna flip Imperial Order, which is very scary. Most of my deck is spell cards. They're gonna be able to make a second Toad here, and then they're gonna kill my blue boy, and in end phase I will activate Every yet again, and they will Toad it. Toad's gonna end back a swap frog for next turn, and I'm gonna go ahead and draw, and I will just have to pass back, because I can't do anything under Imperial Order. My opponent's gonna draw into a trap card, use Ronin, normal summon frog, send something from deck, and now they will go into an IP Masquerena. I guess they're out of Toads. They're gonna use their Paleozoic trap to pop my set card, which is fine, it wasn't doing anything anyway, go into Mistar Boy, into Mech Knight Crusadia Avramax, and swing in for a chunk of damage. But lo and behold, Every is coming back again, and at long last, she will get to resolve her effect, leveling up to 8 and banishing the Avramax. My opponent was able to summon a Paleozoic to block, but what's that gonna do? I got a big beefy dude on board. My opponent will draw into a second copy of a Paleozoic that doesn't do much of anything, forcing them to surrender and giving the game to me. Again, this is definitely not a good version of the deck, like there's a reason I cut these cards, but still a pretty cool game, and this goes to show you just like how powerful Fortune Lady Every can be in a game that goes long. It's a pretty slow card that by itself isn't that threatening, but when it just keeps to come back over and over and over and over, you know, it can be pretty powerful, and more importantly, it's pretty cool. And with that, we have reached the end of another episode of the Junk Box. I had a lot of fun with this one. I didn't really know what to expect getting into Fortune Ladies, but the deck's actually pretty neat. You've got some really cool combos you can do, and if you get like the maximum dream high roll, you can go like Water into Fortune's Future into Knowledge and just draw a million cards and it feels great. And even if you don't do that, you can still do some cool combos and actually put out some like, you know, half decent interactions. It's not great, right? Like you're not gonna go and win big tournaments with this, but let me tell you, after playing Watch in the last episode, it feels pretty good to be playing a deck that like actually feels competent. Right? Like, you actually have potential to generate a bunch of card advantage and put out some threatening boards. And it's pretty cool that you get to do it using a bunch of cards that don't really see much play. Beyond the Fortune Ladies themselves, you've also got, like, Silent Magician and Ascator, which are important components of the deck that you don't really see anywhere else. I really enjoyed playing Fortune Ladies today, and if you enjoyed watching it, please go ahead and leave a like, subscribe if you want to, and go ahead and leave a comment if you have any suggestions for how I can improve my future videos, or if you have ideas of archetypes I should feature on the Junk Box in the future. The next video should be out in a week and a half to 2 weeks. This one went a bit quicker than my first one, so I'm hoping for a bit under 2 weeks, but no promises. If you do want updates on when the next video will be, or you just want to see me say funny things on the internet, feel free to follow me on Twitter at @BrinoLovania, and I'll provide updates on the next video. So with that, that's all I have to say. Thanks again so much for watching, I appreciate it a lot, and I will see you next time on the Junk Box.